Brought to you by Bangkok Bank ราชมงคล University of Technology ธัญบุรี
Good morning, ASEAN. Freshen up your world, your thought, and your idea with us every weekday from 7:30 to 8 a.m. You're with me, Patsurang Desha Putharangsi.
And also me, Wina Dongbrasit. It's Wednesday, the 21st of August, and we will start first in Thailand, Kumpasulang.
Yes, as we all know that yesterday, Thai politicians got a little bit messed up in the House. Yes, and leader Somsak Getsurnon was supposed to, manage the turmoil, but he seemed to fail over it. Anyway, the Parliament President Somsak Getsurnon, who I'm speaking about, whose nickname is Gavel Master, lived up to his name and used his gavel vigorously for the first time yesterday during the House the joint meeting deliberating constitutional amendments. However, his gavel failed to bring order to the House. Instead, they were followed by boos and MPs standing in protest. Somsak ordered the Parliament police to remove any lawmakers who refused to sit down. Several officers surrounded his chair for security, as you can see there from the footage. Well, he actually warned the officers that anyone failing to move the standing parliamentarians out must face a probe. This was followed by pushing, shoving, and tugging between Democrat MPs and Parliament police. Mr. Guladet Pwapatanakun pushed police and put his hand on an officer's neck. Other officers scrambled to lock his arms while MP Tani Tuk Suban tried to help him, and another female MP actually screamed, Kunwina. And Somsak called a 10-minute break, which lasted more than a half an hour. Before the chaos, the lawmakers were to deliberate on a charter amendment related to the election, qualification, and authority of senators. Pheu Thai MP Samat Gao Michai, chairman of the vetting committee, told the meeting that 202 parliamentarians had registered to speak at the plenary. 2 had withdrawn, while some had submitted their motions after the deadline. Meanwhile, 57 motions were deemed by his committee as against the principle of the bill approved in the first reading. He asked the meeting to consider whether the sponsors of the motion should be allowed to deliver to the plenary. The Democrats claimed that all had the right to speak. Democrat MP Nipit Intrasombat said he calculated the days differently from the committee, referring to the controversial closing of the meeting in the first reading. To cut short the debate, which did not go anywhere in the morning, Somsak, who had taken the chairmanship in the afternoon, said he would allow only 2 representatives from the government and opposition MPs and senators to speak before voting. Following protests from the floor, he called for voting, and the meeting voted 339, 15 against the 57 speaking.
And besides the political chaos we had yesterday, Thailand is also having a public fear that the economy might be entering a recession. As the Thailand's financial authorities yesterday sought to calm these fears, saying that prospects in the latter half of the year are positive and quarterly performance should be better than in the previous 2 periods. The economy showed consecutive quarter-on-quarter contractions in the first half of the year, which is technically deemed to be a recession. Weak economic data, aside from signs of political instability and fears over the pullback of quantitative easing in the U.S., encouraged foreign investors to dump Thai shares yesterday. The Stock Exchange of Thailand Index lost another 1.98% to close at 1,370.86 points after a 3.27% drop on Monday. Foreign net sales yesterday was as high as 11.4 billion baht, taking the year-to-date amount to nearly 101 billion baht. The baht also weakened sharply against the U.S. dollar. Finance Minister Kitirat Naranong insisted that the economy had not yet entered a recession. Bank of Thailand Governor Prasan Trairat Warakul also sought to soothe the markets, saying he expected gross domestic product to expand quarter-on-quarter in the July to September period. Prasan said he was optimistic that the economy would expand in the second half as a pickup in the global economy should boost export demand, while the government stimulus measures should boost domestic demand. Niti Tan Prapad, Deputy Director General of the Fiscal Policy Office, said the 2.8% year-on-year growth rate in the second quarter should be the lowest quarterly figure for the economy this year. He foresees sees an improvement in the latter half, pending recoveries in the U.S., China, and Indochina. GDP unexpectedly shrank 0.3% in the 3 months through June from the previous quarter, when it contracted by a revised 1.7%.
Now let's take a look at the update on the flooding in Manila, Philippines, as caused by some of the heaviest rains that submerged more than half of the capital. Manila now began to recede just yesterday. And also, authorities have already, evacuated thousands of residents along Manila's overflowing rivers and braced for more chaos in outlying provinces. At least 8 people have died, including 4 who drowned north of Manila. The dead included a 5-year-old boy whose house was hit by a concrete wall that collapsed, and a 3-year-old boy who fell into a swollen river in Marileaves town in Batang province. 4 people now are missing. Throughout the sprawling, low-lying capital region of 12 million people, offices, banks, and schools were closed, and most roads were impassable. People stumbled through waist or neck-deep waters, holding onto ropes strung from flooded houses. More than 200 evacuation centers were opened in Manila and surrounding provinces, filled with tens of thousands of people. Social Welfare Secretary Corazon Soliman also said that overall more than 600,000 people have been affected by the floods. The flooding that covered half of the city receded to 20%. And in Marikina, where the river breached its banks, authorities started evacuating some 12,000 people to schools and gymnasiums that were turned into emergency shelters. As the weather gradually improved in Manila, the concern shifted to provinces outside the capital that were expected to be drenched as the monsoon travels north.
Malaysia will begin evacuating its 3,300 students from Egypt beginning Tuesday night after days of deadly clashes that have killed nearly 900 people, according to officials. The official speaking to AFP on the condition of anonymity said that the decision was made after assessing the ongoing assault on supporters of ousted Islamist President Mohamed Morsi. The government, decided it's best to bring them back, he said, adding that the students would be evacuated on commercial flights to neighboring countries. Local media also quoted Prime Minister Najib Razak as saying that a team of Malaysian security advisors in Cairo had recommended an immediate evacuation of students as the situation was becoming increasingly uncertain. We will be booking tickets on commercial flights via Oman and Istanbul, among other destinations, to bring our students home, Najib was reported to have said by the Malay Mail Online. Malaysia previously deployed military aircraft to evacuate thousands of its nationals out of Egypt when popular unrest ousted then President Hosni Mubarak in Egypt 2 years ago. Meanwhile, the Philippines on Tuesday ordered the mandatory evacuation of its 6,000 nationals in Egypt after Foreign Secretary Albert Del Rosario visited the country to investigate the security situation after days of violent clashes. Rosario also ordered the deployment of a special team to Cairo to help speed the repatriation of the Filipinos, who he urged to contact their embassy. The Philippine government urged voluntary repatriation of its citizens last week, but raised the alert due to the rising violence. In recent years, the Philippines had to repatriate its nationals from Syria, Libya, and the capital of Yemen due to the unrest in those countries.
Among the developing countries, like in the Greater Mekong sub-region, encompasses Thailand, Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and of course southern China. They're actually bracing for hope to improve their economic performance in preparation for the ASEAN Economic Community. However, today in the special report, I have the pro-poor strategy, the strategic sort of the tactic to improve the economies of 2 countries that we have today is from Vietnam and Myanmar. Let's see this pro-poor strategy towards inclusive and equitable development.
One of the major pushers for the inclusive and equitable development among GMS countries, especially in Myanmar, Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam, is to build sustainable agricultural incentives for the local farmers. It is what the experts said, a pro-poor strategy that is preferred by the government policy as a striving sign for poverty alleviation. The fastest growing economy, yet seemingly a stumbling pace like Vietnam, and the semi-opening up of the country to the global trend like Myanmar, offer this pro-poor policy, but with different tracks. For Vietnam, pro-poor strategy is very important, especially for small producers. Vietnam is moving towards industrial, commercial, as well as cash crop industries, where farmers participate in such new technology, new farming trend, and modern farming techniques. But in the process and supply chain system, big players like big traders, which are normally having preference from the government and having the bigger share in the market. Big traders play active role in working with the farmers, but in a way that farmers do not really benefit from such a system because there are so multi-layers operations. Ms. Ngo Huang, Director of Center for Development and Integration from Hanoi, Vietnam, illustrates the picture for us, giving an example of coffee and rice farmers.
Coffee, for example, is normally see that at the small farmers scale, like from 1 to 3 hectares land. Some problems arise for coffee producers because the coffee producers do not benefit reasonable price from the world market because they have to go through many layers of traders, and they are also dependent on capital, where there's limited access to capital. That's as a government policy or the bank policy. In a way that the bank required mortgage, for example, the land ownership, in order to give loans. But these small coffee producers cannot provide such one to access to the loan. And the market price is manipulated by the traders, local traders. Especially the farmers do not know what is the world price and how much they can claim or they can sell, to what extent and what price they should retain.
For Myanmar, in the strong pace of FDIs and international economic inputs, how would the government care for small farmers and producers? How should a pro-poor strategy be implemented upon them?
Well, in Myanmar, more than 70% of the people are living in the rural areas. So the primary focus of the government is poverty alleviation and people-centered development. So for the farmers, of course, the most important asset is the land, right? The land tenure is very important. So last year in 2012, the government enacted a new farmland law, which gives the farmers the right to mortgage the land, the right to transfer the land, and the right to sell the land. So basically this is one of the very big change for the farmland, right? And also at the same time, most of the agricultural commodities, the export tax has been abolished, and import of agriculture materials, inputs like fertilizer, machineries, pesticides, there is no tariff, so zero tariff on that.
All in all, development in the GMS region should be guided by the principle of sustainable use of natural resources. Strength in community management of resources is also a key to sustainability. Such management is also linked to the principles of governance, partnership, and equality. Communities must feel ownership over the resource management processes. Patsurang Desha Puttarangsi reports.
The Cambodian court has begun its review of the voting complaints of the general elections last month. We'll stay tuned for this story after the break.
Brought to you by Bangkok Bank, Ratchamongkol University of Technology, Thanyaburi,
Well, yesterday afternoon, Cambodia's highest court, the Constitutional Council, began a review of the contested results of last month's general election and leaving open a small possibility that it will resolve the opposition's complaint of the unfairness. The review comes after the State National Election Committee on Saturday rejected all 19 complaints filed by political parties against the results of the July 28 polls. The official results would give the ruling Cambodian People's Party 68 seats in the 123-seat National Assembly and 55 the opposition Cambodian National Rescue Party. The opposition has threatened massive street demonstrations if its complaints over the election process are not dealt with by an impartial independent panel. A panel has been established but seems to be making no progress. The Constitutional Council has up to 20 days to complete its review. The opposition said the street protests would be a last resort by the threat-raised fears of political violence, especially because the government responded by deploying troops and armored vehicles in the capital. Prime Minister Hun Sen, Cambodia's leader for 28 years already, has a reputation of dealing harshly with his opponents. The official popular vote count shows Cambodian People's Party receiving almost 3 million votes and the Cambodian National Rescue Party with almost 3 million votes, with 6 other parties failing to accrue enough votes to win any assembly seats. The opposition says it actually won 63 assembly seats. Even the 55 conceded by the ruling party represents a substantial increase on the 29 seats it held in the last assembly. The main complaint of the opposition concerns the voter registration process, which it alleges led to the possibility of more than 1 million people not being properly listed and therefore unable to vote. The complaint has been supported by several non-partisan poll watching groups.
ASEAN Go Green takes you to an interview with the Bangchak Petroleum on the solar power energy.
สวัสดีค่ะ This is ASEAN Go Green, a program that will open up your horizons towards a greener perspective. Now, while the energy resources around the world are declining, and at the same time, there is also high demand for energy consumption every day. And joining the world trend and realizing the problem, Thailand is now going ahead to build more renewable energy in 10 years' times.
Solar power energy is one of the options for alternative energy and is being supported by government bodies to include it in the 10-year energy development plan in order to target increased consumption by 25%. Despite the notion of wanting to encourage more private businesses to invest in this development track for solar energy, much of the sector remains to be under a sole state entity. Only a few could stay in the competition and avoid a monopoly.
ประเทศเรามีนโยบายส่งเสริมเรื่องของพลังงานแสงอาทิตย์เนี่ยตามแผนของรัฐบาลเนี่ยแผน10 ปีเนี่ยนะฮะเรามีทาร์เก็ตว่าเราจะมีการติดตั้งพลังงานแสงอาทิตย์เนี่ยประมาณ 2,000 เมกะวัตต์นะครับแต่ทั้งหมดที่เอกชนทั้งหมดเข้าไปขอไลเซนส์มาเนี่ยฮะขอสัญญาติดตั้งมาเนี่ยมันเกือบถึง 2,500 เมกะวัตต์ซึ่งก็เยอะมากนะครับแล้วก็ประมาณว่าภายในสิ้นปีหน้านะครับสัญญาทุกอย่างเนี่ยทุกแผนที่ได้รับสัญญามาน่าจะติดตั้งเสร็จเรียบร้อยนะครับ 2,500 เมกะวัตต์นี่ก็ถือว่าเป็นปริมาณที่ไม่น้อยนะครับถ้าเทียบไปก็ประมาณเทียบเท่ากับโรงงานผลิตไฟฟ้าของถ่านหินประมาณ 3-4 โรง
To date, Bangchak has solar energy farms situated in Bang Pa-in district of Ayutthaya province, which is able to generate 70 million kilowatt per hour in each year, enough to power more than 10,000 households. Solar cells have become widely used by large-scale businesses that produce energy, although the government's energy plan was targeting to communities and household usage. Therefore, it begs for more encouragement and support from the government in order to raise awareness and increase more developments from the solar cells to be installed for household purposes.
ก็ในเรื่องของโซลาร์รูฟท็อปนะครับก็คงอยู่ที่ว่าทางรัฐบาลไทยจะมีนโยบายส่งเสริมเรื่องการโปรโมทการใช้โซลาร์รูฟท็อปยังไงนะครับเพราะว่าโดยธรรมชาติของธุรกิจอย่างที่เรียนมันยังต้องการสนับสนุนจากรัฐบาลในการช่วยให้โปรแกรมนี้เดินได้นะครับ ช่วงนี้ก็อยู่ที่รัฐบาลกำลังเขียนแผนอยู่ตรงนี้นะครับว่าจะมี incentive จะมาอย่างไรบ้างนะครับแล้วก็จับตาดูในเรื่องของ incentive plan ตัวนี้อยู่นะครับถ้าตัวนี้ออกมาจริงจังเนี่ยเราคิดว่าบางจากเราน่าจะมี potential ในการเข้าไปทำธุรกิจนี้ได้เหมือนกันนะครับ
As the solar panel has not been widely marketed, the material used for this kind of energy remains to be very costly at the moment. But if households have the solar panels installed, they can also sell the excessive energy generated back to the government. This indicates that if the Thai government supports solar power through home use, it could benefit the country in the long run. Japan is also heading towards this path by promoting households to use solar energy and set a price it buys excess energy produced from solar under the feed-in tariff framework at the world's highest price of 11 baht per 1 kiloton for the next 20 years. The method is to attract the public to solar energy instead of relying on nuclear energy. Apart from this, the plan to promote solar energy for house use will need to be in parallel to developing the entire solar panel industries, which may be one of the most difficult part.
นะครับการลงทุนในเรื่องของการผลิตโซลาร์เซลล์เนี่ยมันเป็นการลงทุนขนาดใหญ่เราต้องมีสเกลคือต้องมีปริมาณมากพอถึงจะแข่งขันในโลกได้นะครับวันนี้ประเทศที่ได้เปรียบในด้านต้นทุนการผลิตสูงสุดก็จะเป็นประเทศจีนนะครับเพราะในลักษณะอย่างนี้เราคิดว่าเรายังในประเทศไทยเรายังแข่งขันยากมากนะครับสิ่งหนึ่งถ้าเราจะลดสักนิดหนึ่งนะครับหรือแทนที่จะ import ทุกอย่างเข้ามา 100% เนี่ยเราอาจจะมาเป็นชิ้นส่วนแล้วก็มาประกอบเองในประเทศไทยอย่างนี้พอทำได้นะครับแต่ถ้าจะเริ่มตั้งต้นน้ำไปเริ่มผลิตตัวอินกอตไปผลิตเซลล์แสงอาทิตย์อันยากมากครับนะครับ
It seems that the installation of the solar power cells will not be materialized in the next few years. But we are beginning to see more office buildings supporting the use of solar panels, which is being considered by the National Energy Policy Committee, chaired by the head of the state.
Despite the drive for a greener living, Thailand still needs most of its natural gas supply from its neighboring countries. So the renewable energy bid by the Energy Ministry is the hope for Thailand to lessen its importation of power energy from its neighboring countries.
That's it for today's edition of Good Morning ASEAN. We'll see you again, same time, same place, same channel.
Mina Jongprasit, thank you so much for joining.
And I'm Pratsurang Desha Podrangsi. สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีค่ะ